President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital has plunged the world into gloom. European governments have issued statements of disapproval, Middle Eastern states have sharply condemned it, and protests by Muslims have erupted across the world. WION was the first channel to expect President Trump to underline the still contested and divided status of the holy city, and the president did not disappoint. But is the doomsday scenario being painted by the majority of global media concerns going to really come true? Or is the US president's orbital shift in West Asia policy not so disastrous after all? WION senior foreign editor Padma Rao breaks it down.
Outrage is a hallmark of our times, especially the vitriol and venom reserved for the most controversial and provocative president of the United States. But the anger that has erupted across the world and set ablaze the social media this time is a more primeval one. It centers around a city which exudes spirituality to three of the oldest faiths in the world, Jerusalem. Mr. Donald Trump has gone where most Western angels fear to tread. From Canada to Japan, from Europe to other parts of Asia, Western and Eastern allies of the United States have denounced Washington's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel for the first time in the history of the Jewish state. Even the United States' closest friend, the United Kingdom, which has unanimously criticized to date for leaving its trademark of divide and rule in the Holy Land, has disapproved of the US president's announcement. Travel advisories against both Palestine and Israel are being published rapidly. Doomsday warnings about an imminent explosion of anger in the Middle East and in all Islamic countries are cluttering the social media, and almost as if on cue, thousands of protesters are gathering on streets across the world. But is this angst justified? Are the Israelis and the Palestinians incapable of seeing through the challenge thrown at them by the move to talk and seal the status of all contentious borders, including what the United States President himself acknowledged, those that divide Jerusalem itself into a Palestinian East and a Jewish West? Let's take a look at the key players on both sides. On the one hand, there's Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is facing multiple graft probes. If elections were held tomorrow, the 68-year-old master politician would not survive in office for another term. He has been accused of trying to push through a bill in parliament to prevent the police from recommending his indictment in the probes. A popularity poll by an Israel Daily just days ago indicates that his has further dropped to 26%. The Prime Minister badly needs a boost, a grand gesture. Successful peace overtures and easing of Israel's stranglehold on the Palestinian Authority's designated lands and eventually agreeing to share Jerusalem as a twin capital may not win him accolades from hardliners, of course. But domestically, he has little to lose. But such a move would boost Mr. Netanyahu's enormous international success even further and win the confidence of the man he's been criticized for trying to emulate, President Donald Trump himself. On the other hand, there is the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Saudi Arabia, which is normalizing relations with arch-enemy Israel, summoned Mr. Abbas to Riyadh last month to persuade him to accept a peace plan drawn up by President Trump's special advisor, his own son-in-law Jared Kushner. Even the Palestinian militant organization Hamas seems anxious to shed its fatigues, lay down its guns and gain mainstream acceptance. Being taken off the American list of designated terror organizations would be a huge boost, but that would require some give and take. While Israel stands isolated in welcoming Mr. Trump's announcement, Hamas has publicly announced an intifada, an uprising against Israel. Mr. Abbas has joined his counterparts across the Islamic world in denouncing it. But it is important to note that even the growing network of Middle Eastern Muslim countries, whom Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu has masterfully managed to lay the foundation for formal bilateral ties with, such as Saudi Arabia, are among those countries. And that in turn indicates that much of the official condemnation may be routine lip sync over a conflict most of these countries have long stopped caring about anyway. So is President Donald Trump's announcement the disaster it's being made out to be? Or is it being perceived as a sliver of an opportunity perhaps, at least by Palestinians with some of the benefits in mind? And by Mr. Netanyahu's influential new Middle Eastern Islamic circle of friends. Whether East and West Jerusalem will ever live side by side along the lines of, say, the Vatican City or San Marino and Italy is anybody's guess. But one thing is for sure, the sandstorms of Islamic outrage may churn for a while, but the prospects of good weather have never seemed brighter. Padma Rao, WION.
Joining me this evening is Puneet Ahluwalia. He's a Republican leader and political and business consultant. He's joining the conversation from Washington. Puneet, good evening. Thanks for speaking with us here at WION. The violence has already become apparent. 2 people have already lost their lives. Doesn't President Trump's decision in many ways pose great threat to U.S. embassies and staff in Israel and, of course, in other parts of the Muslim world?
Well, thank you for having me. I think we have always been under the stress. Our force and our always wise to be cautious. President Trump has a historic and defined.
All right, we seem to be having trouble hearing you, Puneet. Your voice is cracking. Let me try and get that fixed. In the meantime, for our viewers who are joining on the broadcast, just a quick update. There have been multiple clashes that have been taking place between protesters in different parts of Israel. The West Bank, Ramallah has seen security forces, Israeli security forces, firing tear gas on demonstrators who've been chanting slogans against the United States, against Israel. 2 people have already been shot dead by Israeli forces there in those demonstrations. This, of course, following what's taken place just a couple of days ago, the seismic policy shift by the United States, by President Donald Trump, in declaring that the U.S. intends on moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Puneet, if you can hear me, I'll take another question to you. All right, perfect. Why has he gone halfway, Puneet? Why hasn't the president been more categorical in whether he thinks undivided Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel? Why has he left that open for speculation?
First thing is, I think he's defined the foreign policy for the United States, the Middle East. Secondly, I think he's basically laid out our map the State Department have talked about. So I think now it depends on basically details and find.
Unfortunately, we're having trouble listening into Puneet once again. I apologize to our viewers. We'll try and get more details from American Voices and others, of course, on their opinion as far as the violence erupting in West Asia goes. But for now...